Because he had a signet on there.
Yep. But he wasn't a king.
Which is a manner of kingship.
True. But he wasn't the king because he wasn't running the area.
Let's pray. Abba, we've eaten and we're satisfied. We thank you for the land. It's in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
So this is the Midrash for the Torah portion, Beha'alotekha. When you set up is a good translation of that. But we're going to start with a short Midrash or explanation on Chronicles. It's featuring one and only Earl.
Scary. Okay, so they asked me which book I wanted to do. So I was already kind of listening to somebody teach on Chronicles, so I said Chronicles. But the reason I said Chronicles was more because I never knew Chronicles, the theme or the genre of Chronicles basically takes you basically through the captivity, David, Solomon, captivity, but it ends with the return. But in the Kings, it ends with you going into captivity. The Jews, according to Art Scroll, believe that that's the coming hope of Messiah. That's what Chronicles is alluding to. So it was composed by Ezra, according to the sages. That said, there is modern thinkers that believe, oh no, it's not Ezra, it's a chronicler, but yet the last statement in Chronicles corresponds to the beginning statement in Ezra and Nehemiah. So Art Scroll Stone Edition is the ones that are saying it's composed by Ezra under the guidance of the Ruach HaKodesh, or as they say it, divine spirit. And again, the theme of the book, the return on the captives, the coming hope of Messiah. Again, it contrasts with Kings, like I said. In the beginning, it's like all the way through chapter 9 or 10, it's a long list of names. So there's a lot of genealogy going on here. And some of the names are unfamiliar and differ from other names in the Tanakh. I'll give you a good example. I think it is right here. The one name that I wanted to bring out was, the book of Ruth. And in the book of Ruth, the two sons, Elimelech's sons, Machlon and Gideon, so sickly and wasting away. Well, in Chronicles, chapter 4:22, I think it is, somewhere in there, yeah. Their names are Joash, which means despair, and Saraph, which is burning. And it's alluding to their lack of moral character, which describes their eventual doom as a result of the callousness of their disregard for others. So anyway, we have that right there, and we have that to go with. Let's see, what else did I have? Oh yeah, okay. And then it's also, like I said, they look at that as the coming of Messiah to look forward to. So there's a harbinger of future and final redemption. There's prophecies fulfilled on that. There's going to be some connections there, which I'm going to hope to bring together. And that has to do more with, I got to get my head wrapped around this one here. It's the 1,000 generations or something. But Messiah is the 75th generation from Adam. So there's some stuff there. So we have the genealogy of the Messiah that we're gonna look at, and we're also going to look at the Jeconiah curse, and then there's more. So that's just an introduction to it. So what we'll do is we'll read chapter 1 next week, and then we'll afterwards we'll talk about it and go through it. But I want you to look at the genealogy in Matthew, because the genealogy in Luke, as most people know, comes from Mary, but it talks about in there being the supposed son of Joseph. So we're going to discuss that. And then look at the list in First Chronicles 3:16, as far as, or chapter 3, just take chapter 3, the list there for Jeconiah. So you're going to look, chapter 3 in Chronicles goes through the line of David. And you're going to see that line there. So we're going to compare those three. And you're going to find something very interesting. And I've heard a teacher talk about how Zerubbabel is the one that brought the captives or led the captives back out. Okay, so that's in Matthew, right? And he said the same thing for the one in Luke. Because you have a Zerubbabel and a Shealtiel right next to each other. Both lists, they are not the same. To my knowledge, they're not the same. They can't be because of the Jeconiah curse. And nowhere in there do you see where Joseph's line and Mary's line intermingle, because Mary's line comes from Nathan, Joseph's line comes from Solomon. So they didn't intermarry there. That's my take on it right now, but we'll find out. We'll go through, we'll read it, study it on your own. Who knows? You may find something totally different than me. But that's pretty much what I want to go through when it comes to Chronicles. And because I used to think it's just a big list of names and it'd be a boring read. But so far, it's not been very boring at all. It's kind of quite interesting. And the other thing I wanted to mention about Chronicles is it's also referred to as things lost. I think it's what they said it was. Things lost. Or was it things left out? That's what it was. Things left out. So the Hebrew name is, if I get this right, Debrei Hayamim. Mm-hmm. And the Greek, I can't even say the Greek. I don't even know how to say it. Parlabifion. I really botched that one.
Ancient Greek, Eliza.
Now, the Greek name was given by Jerome. So, and the first evidence that Chronicles was even split into two books was from the Greek Septuagint, if I'm not mistaken.
Is modern Greek and the old Greek the same? Basically the same.
You know, I really don't know. I don't know.
Meanings sometimes differ. The letters are the
So when you
same.
say ancient Greek, you're talking about the New Testament era Greek,
But
right?
the letters are,
There was ancient Greek, which is
I mean, like,
predates even that, but there was a segment of Greek that the Septuagint was written in that's actually different than either one, and has its own specific meanings just for that.
It's probably Syrian or Jewish Greek.
no.
Jewish.
Well,
Sorry.
there is that.
Yeah.
There is some of that actually. When you look at some of the words that are derived from Hebrew in the Greek New Testament.
You've heard of Yiddish before, right? That's German and Jewish language together.
You've heard of Yiddish, it has nothing to do with Greek.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't saying that. I was just saying, so that's how you get your Jewish Greek. Same thing. Are you thinking of Latin?
I wasn't
now that would be
thinking, I
cool.
was
Latin
debating
Hebrew.
that question.
Oh, okay.
There's different writing styles. Greek has changed over time in terms of how things are written, at least how New Testaments were copied and things like that. Sometimes they're, some of the later manuscripts are basically all caps in there. That's a way of saying it, uncials.
I mean, you wouldn't have, if you were searching something now today, and you're looking back, like we would look back to old Hebrew, you're looking back to old Greek, would you have to pick a specific time frame for that Greek language, or is it the same throughout?
No, it was different.
Yeah, Greek has changed. It's like
Yeah.
The
most
question
like all
was still
languages.
readable to
There's-
a Greek 200 years later.
Oh, it was still readable. The thing is when because the time frame for that specific dialect, I guess you could call it, of Greek was used, each of the words had specific meanings that have changed since then. So they can actually go back to documentation about that specific version of Greek to get the specific meaning that they were intending as opposed to what it's changed
So
to
you
now.
would have to be aware of the Greek timeframe.
Yeah.
I think so.
It would probably still be readable, same way that stuff from the 1700s, even though it's weird, you can get the gist of it
Yeah.
pretty easy. Even the 1600s stuff, it's still,
It's getting worse.
Yeah.
All right, any further questions of Earl?
Where?
In the refrigerator.
Didn't know that cave.
Yeah, it's under there, all right. Just don't know where. It's staying warm. It's awful cold in here.
Looking forward to it.
So this-
Looking forward.
Oh, okay.
This was our front slide, or this is the slide similar to one we had earlier when I did the readings. So here's a question, as you all want to know: what is the number? There are how many mitzvot within this Torah portion according to the traditional counting of Ramban? Yes.
whatever the
are-
highest number is.
Is it 1, 3, 5, or 7?
7.
Go with C.
D.
Okay, so who guesses A,
Connie.
1 and 0? Okay,
Connie.
He told his watch.
is that voter fraud? Okay, anyway, who guesses B, 2 plus 1 equals 3? Who guesses C, 3 plus 2 equals 5? Who guesses D, 4 plus 3 equals 7?
Those are
B.
true though. 1 plus 0 is 1.
Yep.
2 plus 1 is
Mathematically, those are correct, but that those are the answer to a different question.
I'd always go with the highest number.
Now, Jim always said choose C, when in doubt, guess C, I
That's
think.
what I'm guessing C.
That
And
was
Jim
what I was taught in
didn't
the
even
army.
vote, so.
I've since lost faith in that.
Well,
Oh,
last-
ye of little. Oh.
Last time it was C, so.
Have you gone for D for Dominion?
Well,
As the-
A is out.
You're out here.
That ain't fair.
Mom.
B is out. And it's C.
One time out of
4.
35.
One time out of 4.
haven't seen something in that long time.
Good job.
Good job.
Of course, you saw the slide.
And here they are. There's the first 4 are all in chapter 9, and they're all about Pesach Sheni. What does that phrase mean? How would you translate Pesach Sheni?
The Pesach where you missed the first one.
Yes, second Passover, second Pesach.
The sequel. It says Shani.
Pesach the sequel?
The sequel.
Well, it's really you missed the first one, so it's not really a sequel per se. Okay.
Why is that not Shani and Shani? There's different, I guess, I'm supposing there's difference between Shani and Shani.
Same root. So the offering is the Torah of this, and the first 2 are Torah of eating the of the Pesach offering. The next one is the eating of the offering. Who's allowed to eat it? Not allowing the meat to remain till morning, just like regular Pesach, and to not break any bones of the Pesach Sheni offering. And the only one that is not related to Pesach Sheni is from Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 10, the Torah of blowing the trumpets in the sanctuary, or the Torah of blowing of trumpets. And when it says trumpets here, it's not right. The word is not meaning shofar. It's not shofar. It is in fact silver trumpets.
So what, is there a
Chatzarot.
different Hebrew word for that? What's the Hebrew word?
Zera is the Chatzarot is the word for silver trumpet for plural. Okay, so I do have a number of backup slides. I'm not going to go through all the things here because I don't want to stay here till Well, I wouldn't mind staying here till midnight, but you guys can.
I wouldn't mind either.
So-
Mondays are holidays. I mean, we've got all day tomorrow and everything, so.
I don't know if I'd make
Oh,
it.
that's right, Monday's a holiday.
Oh, no.
Is everybody
No,
off?
typically Thursday is the holiday.
Is everyone off?
Memorial Day is Monday.
Are y'all off?
Memorial Day is Monday.
Yes.
Y'all busy?
I ain't busy.
I'm
I'm out of
always
work at
busy.
the moment. I ain't busy.
You're busy to do some farm.
True.
So, first slide, El Mul Pene. What it says toward the face, how it's usually translated. It's
So mule penny.
yeah, mule penny. That'd be a that you they can tell that you're not from around here. It is it's to or toward the front, mul, and then face. You recognize that word pene. The sages have understood this, meaning that the lights of the menorah point toward the center stem, concentrating all light in the middle, or all light toward the center of the menorah.
Wish I could see a picture of what that would be.
It's probably one of the rare times I agree with Rabbi.
What? Write that down.
I'm with you, Jim.
The sage from Illinois has spoken.
Not from Illinois,
Yeah.
Southern Illinois.
Oh,
There's difference, yeah.
That's the bad.
Little Egypt?
So it's Southern Illinois, Cape Girardeau, Missouri, all that is called Little Egypt.
I didn't know that.
and we
And I came out of it.
we discussed actually before the study a little bit inside before we even started the service the meaning of Beha'alotekha. That's the first letter. I'll go back a slide or so here to look at that word. A couple slides here. Relive this. I should have probably said earlier, but the ba on there is typically in, by, or with, but in this case, it's usually translated as when. And what's the root word for the word ahalotka? Well, it's the word Allah, or you may recognize it from aliyah, to go up. That's why it's often translated as mount. It's when you mount the lamps, as in you're mounting the lamps on something else, like lifting them up and putting them on the menorah. It's probably not meant to be quite the way of doing it, but it's when it says when you set up is probably the most common translation for that. But when you elevate, when you go up, when you mount, so to speak. So, back up.
See,
Good job. That was your guess, Shani.
yes.
They said that the right side of the menorah symbolizes spiritual pursuits, while the left side, temporal matters. Thus, the Torah teaches that all activities should be directed toward Yah's face, toward his service. How do you think this view aligns with the Ketuvim Netzarim? All activities point towards service of Yah.
Sounds good to me.
Does this have anything to do with the nefesh and the neshama?
I don't think directly.
Nobody ever talks about it, but it's,
Because, well, this is really just talking
H
about,
does.
I know, what I'm saying is I found out that what they said was actually the opposite of what most people believe.
so if you look up, for example, 1 Corinthians 10:31,
Well, then that would
You don't have
be
to look it up
literally
because
exactly the case.
because it's on the screen. You don't have to look it up, but you can verify it. Verify it. Don't believe me. I might put it, quoting from, the Wayne Ingalls translation of
When does that
out of the ancient Aramaic. Whether then you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of Elohim, which, again, I think parallels the idea of doing all for if the menorah symbolizes one side for the service of Elohim and one side for temporal matters, it seems like it makes it doing all.
That's cool.
But that doesn't mean you can do
They
anything.
lost you?
The rabbis just lost them.
I
Why?
didn't
Because
say
they agree with 1 Corinthians 10:31?
Some people think it's just
Oh.
only one, but
No, I don't think that.
Why did they lose?
Hmm?
Why did they lose?
I mean,
They over symbolize the menorah.
the way they take everything and make it symbolize something else.
Oh, that's Hebrew in general.
You know, that
Everything
means-
symbolizes something in Hebrew. It all points at something else. That's one of the reasons why if you've got two Jews in a room, you've got 15 opinions.
How many opinions do you have?
I thought it was just 3.
There's any messianic group, there's 70 opinions, no matter how many people are there.
60 people.
it's kind of like being in a room with George.
3 people.
George? Who's George? My son?
Okay, so moving to chapter 9, and certainly we can go back and if there's something we don't cover in this, there's certainly opportunity to circle back, let's say, and do that.
Not even phrase anymore.
What is?
It always makes people laugh when you say that these days.
Say what?
Circle back.
What's wrong with that? That's what the Indians did, didn't it?
Oh,
Well,
circle back Saki.
Huh?
Jen Psaki, the prep.
you have to watch the news.
It's
Never
an
mind.
exception.
Why are you going
Because I
away?
completely lost too.
Y'all read more
Joe
confusion
Biden's-
than the rabbis.
His
Is your chair
I've
broke?
not been paying attention to anything that
No,
comes
she
out
the
of
one
that
sitting
mouth.
next to me.
press
For the lightning
secretary,
strikes.
Jen
Yeah.
Psaki.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
What's he talking about?
Okay.
He's talking about
I've heard of
some
her. I've heard of
Japanese.
No,
Motorcycle.
she's actually Polish, which
Yeah, I
Japanese
know.
motorcycle,
Jen
Jen Psaki.
Redhead.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you
We'll
say?
circle back to that.
Okay.
Circle back to that.
So, Pesach Sheni
Wayne trying to stop using.
is the only makeup feast. There aren't any other makeup feasts. You don't find second Sukkot,
Yep.
except potentially with what?
New moons,
The Messianic groups.
Messianic group calendars.
What was your question?
You don't find any makeup feast in the Torah,
True.
but there is a makeup feast for Sukkot, but not in the Torah.
Jeroboam, a month later. It was not like 1 month later.
It's a feast that starts with a spit when you say that.
Hanukkah?
Hanukkah.
Ah.
Hey, we said that together. You owe me a Coke.
I don't snort.
Starts with a loogie.
Say it from gutter.
So Hanukkah was designed to be a makeup for not being able to celebrate Sukkot for 3 years.
Who did that?
The Maccabees.
Mm,
That's why it's 8 days.
that's why the tribe of Judah doesn't really recognize them much anymore.
They celebrate Hanukkah.
I'm just teasing. Never mind.
We can't drift this into the table when y'all do that.
What?
Or the fussing with each other.
Earl is picking on Wayne.
And
Oh.
when it's being serious.
Wayne's trying to be stoic.
Mom.
So why would you be able to, or why is second Passover a thing?
Because the feast of Passover is 1 day. Sukkot is 8 and
How
because
many-
the feast of unleavened bread is not the same as Passover because Passover is literally the first day.
We will talk about that.
I
We
think it's so
will
important
talk about
because-
that.
And that's why there would be a difference because they could do the feast of unleavened bread, but they couldn't do the
Well,
feast of
They
the
can,
Passover sacrifice on the first day.
but there's another aspect to that. Maybe I think if you can do a second Passover the second month, it doesn't interfere with Pentecost or Shavuot because it doesn't matter because it's not counting from there. That count's already going, but you're already in the season of the feast there, but you can celebrate Pesach and Feast of Unleavened Bread right then and there, and you're good because it says 8 days.
Was the question why?
Actually,
is
the
it-
makeup one was only 1 day.
Why is it a thing?
It was on
Why
the
is the second
14th.
one
Was it?
then? He says.
But
so here.
He said you're going to eat unleavened bread, so you're keeping the
Speak
Feast
on
of
the
laws.
day.
If you don't keep
On
it,
the day.
you are outlawed from Israel.
And so yes, is that, do you have a thing, Lisa?
What?
Okay, just move your hand. All right. So
It was, He thought Eliza was trying to say something and she was waving her hand. Well,
Why are you hiding down there?
She wants
You
to
can see the
know
screen.
she can see clearly down from there.
Ouch, I heard that.
Hey, hey, what was that for?
Because I can't.
I'm not saying anything. I don't want to
What
get
did you have in
slapped.
there that's eat?
Did not deserve that one.
So why would you not be able to go into the tabernacle or the temple for the Passover?
Because you're unclean.
And you're unclean?
If
Or
you've
your
handled
journey.
if you've handled a body, or if you're too far away to be able to do it.
We see that the questioners asked Moshe about it, because they'd been with a body of a relative.
Yes.
And so they couldn't, but because of that, they couldn't go into the tabernacle or later be the temple. But, and so when you look at just in terms of clean versus unclean, the biggest, I mean, is clean versus unclean is not necessarily good versus bad. You've done something bad at all.
The unclean is not.
The unclean-
Sinning.
Right. The unclean is not evil saying, but it separates you from the ability to go into the temple or the tabernacle.
So ceremonially unclean.
Yeah, I mean, but you can't, yes, you can't go into that, the place of service if it's unclean
Right.
status. So you want to remain clean,
Right.
but you also want to honor your relatives and so on. So, yeah, you have a,
I just had a thought,
Yeah.
or not a thought, but the three feasts, where you come to Jerusalem, only one of them do you have to go into the tabernacle or temple. Only one, and that's Passover, because
If
you're bringing your sacrifice lamb in during. For the others, it's the whole
Mhm.
the whole nation as a whole, not individually.
right.
Passover's personal.
Passover's personal.
It's
Good
individual. It's
It's
almost central. It's kind of the central feast.
Isn't everyone in a household required to eat at the Passover?
How's that all done at the temple with all those new people?
Because they
It's
took
only
it out.
butchered there, or it's
Sacrifice
sacrificed
there,
there,
and then take it to the
but then you
homes.
take it to your
Yeah.
homes and deal with it then. But you have to be there to be
That's a
able
lot
to
of sacrifice.
put your hands on the sacrifice when it's sacrificed.
It's not communal.
It's not communal, it's individual.
The famous historian Josephus said that the blood in the streets of Jerusalem ran, were ankle deep high sometimes with the blood of the sacrifices. Certainly the Wadi Kidron would probably have been there. I mean, right outside the Temple Mount.
It's a lot of blood. A lot of lambs.
No flies.
Sure, with a fertilized
Did
land.
you know there were no flies?
Nope.
You want to know why?
Nope.
We actually know why.
Because chickens were banned.
Well, no, when you
The jokes are bad?
Chickens were banned.
Oh, chickens are bad.
but no, that had nothing to do with it. There were no flies because of
Torah.
the mix of the
Incense.
the incense.
The
Um,
18
In the
They burnt it and it's like mild.
I think I think you probably would caveat that with saying, according to tradition, there were no flies because of the Ketorah.
No, they when the Dead Sea, the Dead Sea tunnels and whatnot, one of them,
Qumran caves?
yeah, one of them was kind of paved over with like really precious stones and stuff. But it had been sealed. It was an entire year's worth of properly made incense. And when they took some down to the Dead Sea and actually burnt a little bit to see what it smelled like. Because the Bible even says that no woman needed to wear perfume all the way to Jericho.
Yeah.
And when they burned it,
Smell the perfume
there were
of a
no
woman.
flies for 3 days and they only burnt it once.
I need some.
Now,
It was good stuff.
it must have been the Israeli archaeologists that did this, because any other
Can we
nation
get
that
some?
found that would have
Wouldn't have had any,
capitalized on that.
right, and wouldn't have had any idea what to do with it. No, it was,
Sold on eBay.
it's part of the group. It's part of the group that's actually putting
According to the
together
latest
the new,
reports.
putting together stuff for the new temple. They actually, because of that, it started to degrade almost immediately, and so they tested some to them no flies for 3 days at the Dead Sea, which is very well known for its flies because it's kind of dead. But yeah, now they know the proportions of and how it was set up. So it
But
was incredible.
on the other hand, it's illegal according to the Torah to make your own version of the incense.
Right, which is why they were
Well,
trying to
even,
find out what
even
the
to use
original
it for
was.
anything other than the temple.
Don't try this at home.
This is not a DIY. No, DIY, sorry.
Could be, if you have an AFT.
Yeah, this is actually, he was one of the Levite groups that's actually trying to set up stuff for the new temple and get it repaired, and he was on the team that was actually excavating.
Scripture doesn't record any other Passover celebration by Israel while in the wilderness, in the Exodus. Any thought on why this may be the case?
Does it have to record it all, or the
Doesn't have to, but
Oh.
none are recorded.
Probably because this one was special, because people were asking questions, and
because
So they
that's
said,
in the new
let's do it
rules
there.
instituted.
Yeah.
Second Pesach?
Or,
Well, my thought might be from Yehoshua chapter 5, verse 7, the children whom he raised up in their place, Joshua circumcised,
uncircumcised.
for they were uncircumcised because they had not circumcised them along the way. So,
And you
so they may not have been following the rules.
can't do Pesach without being circumcised, check or hold, right?
Oh, yeah. that's
Check.
right.
without being under the knife.
And they had no hospitals, so they had, there are no mohels. Okay, so this is the how second Passover was done in the land in approximately 724 before the Common Era. A couple slides on this. This is one of the ones that we, at least at Bet Tefillah, we typically read sections of this before we do a Passover celebration. But the sovereign and his leaders and all the assembly in Jerusalem had taken a counsel to perform the Passover in the second month. For they were unable to perform it at its time because not enough priests had set themselves apart and the people had not gathered at Jerusalem. And the matter was right in the eyes of the sovereign and in the eyes of all the assembly. And they settled the matter to send a call to all Israel from Beersheba to Dan to come perform a Passover to Yahweh Elohim of Israel at Yerushalayim, since they had not done it for a long time, as it is written. And then continues on, reading a couple verses later, excuse me. And also, the hand of Elohim was on Yehudah to give them one heart to do the command of the sovereign and the rulers at the word of Yahweh. And many people, a very great assembly, gathered at Jerusalem to perform the festival of unleavened bread in the second month. And they rose up and removed the altars that were in Jerusalem, and they removed all the incense altars and threw them into the Wadi Kidron. Then they slaughtered the Passover on the 14th day of the second month, and the priests and the Levites were ashamed and set themselves apart and brought the burnt offerings to the house of Yahweh. For many of the people, many from Ephraim and Manasseh, Issachar and Zebulun, had not been cleansed, yet they ate the Passover contrary to what was written. But Hiskiyahu prayed for them, saying, Yahweh, who is good, provide atonement for everyone who has prepared his heart to seek Elohim. Seek Elohim, Yahweh Elohim of his fathers, though he is not cleansed, according to the cleansing of the set-apart place. And Yahweh listened to Hiskiyahu and healed the people and children of Israel who were in Jerusalem for the festival of unleavened bread 7 days with great joy. And the Levites and the priests praised Yahweh day by day with instruments of praise before Yahweh. So, and then this is the final one before we ask a question. Hiskiyahu spoke to the heart of all the Levites, those having good understanding concerning Yahweh, so they ate what was appointed 7 days, slaughtering peace offerings and making confession to Yahweh Elohim of their fathers. And all the assembly took counsel to perform another 7 days, and performed it another 7 days with joy. And the priests, the Levites, rose and blessed the people, and their voice was heard, and their prayer came up to a set-apart dwelling place, to heaven. So Israel did second Passover in chapter 2, verse 32.
Second Passover and Second Chronicles.
Second Passover, Second Chronicles. when we compare in practice of 2 Chronicles with Bamidbar chapter 9, what do we learn? Well, in Bamidbar chapter 9, it only lists second Passover. But that when they did not only second Passover, but second unleavened bread. They put those two holidays together. Now, it also says they did another 7 days after that, but specifically it said they did it for unleavened bread in 2 Chronicles chapter 30. So so it shouldn't be surprising, I guess, but in the first temple period, Passover is understood to be a pilgrimage feast, check. But the Torah only says unleavened bread, because obviously they go together. But Hezekiah, and in the first temple period, the Levites, it says, whose prayers were heard in heaven, they interpreted Passover as in Numbers chapter 9 as Passover plus unleavened bread, because that's how they walked it out. That's how they kept that commandment, even though they hadn't done it for a long time.
But it says here in chapter 9 in Bamidbar, or Numbers,
Mm-hmm.
that on the 14th day of the second month at twilight they may keep it. They shall eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs.
But that's part of the Passover.
I know.
I mean,
I know, because even though Pesach itself starts between the evenings, you might say, or between whatever, when you actually go to eat the meal, it's already the next day. It's already the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
Well, traditionally, it starts before sundown on the 14th and
Yeah.
goes until after sundown on the 14th. So it encompasses part of Passover and part of unleavened bread.
Yeah.
But that's not, I mean, it seems to me that the interpretation by King Hezekiah and his priesthood
Mm-hmm.
was that Passover can't be separated from unleavened bread.
Right.
And so they didn't just keep the 1 day feast, they keep 7 days after
Well,
that,
I'm
which
agreeing with
is unleavened bread.
That's what I'm
Okay.
saying. It said unleavened bread, and I
I see. Uh-huh.
take it as if they would have kept the entire
Oh, I see,
week.
because they would have, yeah. Well, that's how I think, must have looked at it as well. Because Passover is difficult to separate from unleavened bread. Although,
Yes.
in the past, when we've done second Passover, I mean, in previous years, there was a time we did a second Passover for whatever reason. We were just looking at it
Mhm.
from the perspective of Numbers 9, and there wasn't a second unleavened bread as well.
Right.
But as time since then, I think we did both of them.
Yeah.
It depends on interpretation and how far you want to take it. If you want to,
You know.
Well, to me, it's
Yeah.
hard to separate the two.
Yeah.
This is like the beginning, so you carry it all the
Then
way
you
through.
You throw in, well, like a second.
Well, yeah, but they did it out of joy because they hadn't done it for a
They've
long
been doing
time.
that for
Yeah.
the First week on the second month, too.
Yeah.
They were required on the second month to do Passover, but then they voluntarily did the first one. Oh, and by the way, let's go ahead and do another one.
Yeah, but when you look at it, it says they were celebrating unleavened bread for the first week. It doesn't say they're celebrating unleavened bread the second week. They were doing it for additional 7 days, but they weren't doing unleavened bread per se in the same kind of a thing. I mean, what I mean is, it says specifically they were trying to do unleavened bread,
Mhm.
and then they were overjoyed by doing it, so they kept it going another 7 days.
But would they have been sinning if they had not done unleavened bread? Just done the Passover on the second month?
I don't think I want to go down that road.
I will say that their interpretation was they had to do it that way.
Yeah.
Their interpretation was second Passover and second unleavened bread are inseparable. You can't do one without the other.
I understand.
love of marriage.
Because this happened to us numerous times where we, like say, one time we were out of the state or whatever, and it was a real hard time, so we were considering if we could possibly celebrate unleavened, not just ahead of time, because unleavened bread is the one that's applicable to us now. You know what I'm saying? So I think the question was, can you, wherever you are, you can celebrate unleavened bread. You don't have to have a sacrifice or whatever. So do you do, if you skip the first one, are you still required to do unleavened bread at that time? That was always the question for us.
If you skip Passover,
If you don't do, understand, I know now we don't get to do Passover,
Mhm.
you know,
Right.
the way it's supposed to be done. But when someone was away on a journey or unclean, did they still do the unleavened bread? In other words, they still, because it, you know, sets a strict requirement not to eat leaven or you'll be cut off
Mhm.
in that time. So what I'm wondering is, did they still observe the unleavened bread even if they were gone or unclean?
Well, if you look back at an ancient example, if they were unclean, they probably would not have even came to Jerusalem. So they wouldn't have been, they wouldn't have done Passover. They've been outside, you know, on a, if you will, still on a journey, if you will, outside that. So probably would not have done unleavened bread either. But that's speculation, because I don't think the scripture actually says one way or the other on that.
Yeah, because that, to me, that's the real first question, which you actually really practically run into. We've done it several times when we were in that situation, when we was like,
Is it possible, I mean, nowadays, you know, Amazon is really a big issue. Is it possible that back then, if they had been on a journey, could they have had unleavened bread? Like if they were somewhere else, if they're like actively traveling, could they have observed, you know, would they have that unleavened bread or would they have to take, you know, eat whatever they had with them?
It's funny because the reason unleavened bread was instituted was because they were on a journey.
That's right. That's probably a weird question. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't know what the.
McRoyals.
I don't know, I mean, I don't know how the lack of convenience stores and all that would affect people.
Well, they were talking about this, wasn't it this store person talking about I want my leeks and onions? Was that last portion? I forget now.
We read that today.
Yeah.
That was the mixed
Leeks,
multitude.
onions, yeah, leeks, onions, and garlic.
And they led the Israelites into rebellion. Or complaining.
To the point where they ate so much quail it came out their nose. Which I thought was hilarious that it said that. God said, I'm going to make you eat quail till it comes out your nose.
Oh, I was going to look up. Speaking of quail, I forgot to. Denver asked what the word was.
Quail?
Yeah.
I thought it was quail.
No, but I'm saying what was the word?
In Hebrew?
Yeah, that was here. Let me find it.
Oh, my Bible that would have that
Numbers-
is over there.
It's the word selav.
Silav?
It's not. He asked whether it was Yonah, which is dove, but it's in Numbers 11:31. It is selav. Shin lamed vav.
There's no E on the end of that. Say love E.
No, that'd be goodbye, wouldn't it?
No.
That'd be the Aramaic word chow.
Chow?
Say love E is, that's like,
Such as like.
It's the time.
or such as like. Yeah.
Ah,
Okay. So this is the trumpet blasts, the silver trumpet, the Hazarot for silver trumpets in Numbers 10 verse 2. That's where that where you see the word silver trumpets. That is the trumpets of silver. It's kasaf and Hatzarot. Kasaf is the word for silver, and Hatzarot is the plural of trumpet. Both these two silver trumpets made out of hammered work. They serve you to summon the community. When both are blown in long blasts, the word long blast there is tekiah, or sometimes I've heard it pronounced as well tekiah. The whole community is a cell symbol. So the whole assembly symbols. Only one is blown. It's the same tekiah. It's only the leaders, the heads of Israel's contingent, cell symbol. But when you sound the short blast, Utekatem Torah, the divisions encamped on the east shall move forward, or moving out. So it doesn't list Shevarim in this. The traditional blast of the trumpet for Yom Kippur is a series, and it's 1391, which would be Tekiah, Shevarim, Teruah, Tekiah. And you continue that until we get to Tekiah Hagadol,
Yeah.
the last, or the great trumpet. So here's another, continue on here. When you blow a teruah, there's a short blast. The camps which are encamped on the east shall travel a second teruah south. Assembling the congregation shall blow a tekiah, but not a teruah. The descendants of Aaron shall blow trumpets, hatzarot. Shall be an eternal statute for your generations.
Interesting. Shall be an eternal statute. But yet,
So
the temple was the place where God put his house. But yet, that's an eternal statute of blowing the trumpets.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that work when he's now in his own house?
well, since this is for it's also talking about the tekiah, which is to call all people there. Or with one trumpet, it's to call the leadership, and for two, it's to call all the people. It would that part I could see is still
But
being
when-
valid.
It's not only just.
Shall travel. Shall travel.
So
When assembling the congregation, you blow a tekiah, a long blast.
The camps encamped to the south shall travel.
That's a teruah, short blasts.
This
Verse
shall be an
7.
eternal statute
Verse
for
7.
your generations.
yeah, the long blast symbols the congregation.
Yeah.
But not a teruah. The teruah is kind of the alarm.
Yeah.
Says move on out.
Well, my point is that talking specifically of the one, or is it referring to all?
I think it's
Because
talking
the
about fact that
descendants
Aaron,
of Aaron, the priests, shall blow the trumpets, plural.
There are two of them.
This shall be an eternal statute for your generations.
I think it's talking about the fact that Aaron's sons get the privilege of
Tooting their
blasting
own
people's
horn.
ears out.
Their own horn.
So what?
Can
What's
you
your
go back to
guess?
the previous page?
Yes. Before I do, though, I want to ask the question.
Okay.
Which word is used in Hebrew for statute in this scenario?
Ah, good question. Don't know.
Hold on. Let me guess. Hukot or
Indeed, that is correct. And what is a hook? How would you define that word? Again, what
like
is
this? Hook?
Nope, hook? The three types of mitzvot
All
are
right. He finally shut me up. Hukot?
Cooking?
I can't remember the other two. Sorry.
Mishpatim.
mishpatim, edot, and hukot.
You know what you need to do to get people to remember that is to think of some one or two line little song with incorporating those. Homework.
Do you like those terrible
Weird Al.
Sesame Street songs for the alphabet and numbers and stuff?
Appeal to the child and everybody.
But wait a minute. So
So the kind of commandment that is your due because Yah said so is the kind of commandment this is.
right. But where I'm going is that incorporating
It's not important.
all of it?
I don't think. I'm sorry. Dad.
Okay,
I
whatever.
can't bear it.
It's an eternal statute for your generations, but yet that was when the tabernacle
It's
was
assembling
moving.
the congregation is I think what's being spoken of here.
Okay,
Because Israel's not going to be remaining on the move eternally, right?
exactly.
But the congregation will be assembled,
Yeah. So
Yes.
the tekiah is the important one.
All right.
but it's the trumpets. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Okay, because you blow both, on verse 3, you blow a long blast on both to assemble the entire community. And in verse 4, only one is blown, and it brings the chieftains, the head of Israel's contingents.
I know that.
And those are the only things that could still be done once there was a temple, and once they were no longer traveling like that. So if Israel goes traveling again,
when Shiloh
Aren't
comes.
they supposed to travel to Petra at some point?
I don't think they're blowing horns going to Petra.
If they're traveling as a group, I mean.
With all that huffing and puffing, I ain't
yeah,
blowing no
they'll be
horns.
fleeing. They'll be
Anyway,
fleeing.
Right?
wait a minute. What happened?
What? We went to the next slide.
A couple slides fast.
No, this is the, well, this was one slide past. This is the, then they departed. That's the same thing that was on the other
Okay.
slide.
Okay.
Over the army, and the banner of the camp of the children of Yehuda departed first, according to the divisions, and over the army was Nachshon, son of Aminadab. What does tradition say about Nachshon?
He was the first person to go into the Red Sea.
Yes, he went in so fast his feet got wet.
He wasn't
He
sticking
beat the water
around, huh?
being split.
According to tradition.
Wow, okay.
Let's instituted the tradition of football.
Next.
Thus says Rabbi Yaakov. Okay, so here's a depiction, a diagram of the camp. So the arrow points north. So the north side is Dan heading that side up. And so the south side is Reuven. The east side is Yehuda or Judah, and the west side is Ephraim.
Where's the Levites?
In the middle.
Well, the Levites are shown there as the Kohathites. Well, there's Levites, yes. Those are probably carrying the ones carrying the ark would be from the sons of Aharon. But you have Merari and Gershon and Kohat as carrying different parts of that.
So they are around.
They are
Actually-
surrounding the tabernacle.
When it said blowing the trumpet in alarm, one person and then two people.
It said from the east.
East for one person and two for south. Two people for south.
Two blasts for south.
What?
What?
Short blast.
My understanding.
No.
Well,
Short blast, the first one is when the east leaves, and when they blow it twice, the south leaves.
The way that they replicate that.
so I have a diagram that Jim has seen before. It's the marching diagram.
Seems to me like what would happen is it goes this way. Judah and his group leave, and then Dan and his group, and then Ephraim and their group leave, and then Reuben's the last one. So that's when they fire off a second one.
So here's another view of that. It's showing the order of march on the side. Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, the tabernacle, carried by Gershon and Merari. Then Reuben, Simeon, and Gad. And then the set-apart objects carried by Kohat. And then the west side, Ephraim. And then the north side, Dan. So there's a...
Are they the oldest ones?
Reuben was the oldest.
Reuben was the oldest, that's why he was last.
No, he wasn't last.
No, Naphtali was last.
Next. So where are the priests in this? Well, the ark seems to be in the lead, and with it, the sons of Aaron.
Yeah.
And so, first of all, before we get to that, I want to. There's a common misperception, in my view, that quote the cross in the wilderness, that Israel marched across the wilderness as a cross.
I don't see that happening.
Yeah. Well, neither do I. But that's the idea behind that. That's not the animation. Let's put it that way. So, as I said, a big cross sweeping through the land. You know, when you look at the Paleo-Hebrew letter Tav, it is kind of looked like a cross there. But it seems to me that this doesn't quite line up with the march order we've been reading, because the march order we read doesn't look like a cross moving across the wilderness, does it?
Nope.
And so, as I remark here, it seems to be more like Constantine's vision than instructions to Israel. Okay. So this is how an army would march that way? I don't think so. It looks like a giant
Mess.
line formation. Everybody just loses the wrong way. Anyway, all right. And now for what you've all been waiting for.
Thus ends the class. Tune in next week.
Wait. He's got music. Let's hear it.
Okay, so first, the Shekinah moves out, right?
Where's trumpets?
They haven't blown yet.
Levites and the ark move, and then now's the time for the others to move.
Levites and the ark moved right through Judah?
They moved right through Judah. There's not that many of them. It's just an ark. So then marching out. The sound of marching is not coming through for some reason. There should be marching in the background.
I remember marching feet.
There's marching feet. Their tabernacle is taken up. The Gershonites and Merarites move out, and then comes Reuben. Goes Reuben. Sorry about the marching part, right? It sounded better with marching feet.
We can do those sounds.
The Kohathites take off with the temple stuff. They're not supposed to unwrap it.
There goes Benny. No F.
Wait a minute, I don't remember it saying anything
Yes,
other than
Benny.
for Reuben and the first.
Nope, you're wrong. They all have the trumpets to move out.
Dan, Asher, Naphtali.
Very last.
So I'm guessing the people carrying the trumpets are the last ones to take off.
You got to go, and they got to tell them to go. Someone's got to tell them to go. Who's marching? Who's leading this march anyway?
So why were they all in that?
They do the Indian run catch up.
What?
Why were they in that order?
So that probably would have put them in a long line.
Yes, that'd be a column formation.
Yeah.
Dan is as it says, Dan.
No.
Yeah, Dan is. What does it say? Dan is in there. Do you remember?
A judge, a serpent in the
No.
way.
What does it say? What does it say? What Dan's job is in this formation? They're the rear guard.
Yeah.
Oh,
Then why are there two after him?
Dan is leading the rear guard.
Behind the blower.
Say again?
Couldn't there have been Levites stationed behind the blower? And then they
Probably.
got back up?
There's probably Levi's the whole way around.
They're wearing road guard vests. They run to the front of the formation after first. It's like 60 miles away.
Indian run.
Thinking about it in that regards, it's possible it wasn't a straight column formation. Because if Dan is leading the rear guard, then it could be Dan and then Asher Manasseh column side by side. So it's like multiple arrow formations.
Kind of hard to move that way.
No,
You know, each
Not
camp
necessarily.
had to be really wide. Look how many
I don't-
thousands in each camp.
I don't see that happening. A rear guard, because the other tribes could have had the side guards, but the rear guard would have been,
Well, isn't
To the rear?
moving in one long column, isn't that really efficient for long travel
it is,
for lots of people?
till you get the accordion effect going. But,
That only happens during
Runs.
brigade runs.
Yeah. in a large column, if I'm not mistaken, you have people set aside in that column that their job is to look to the left or look to the right.
Yeah, you're gonna have scouts out.
But the people themselves are just moving like little ants.
So a rear guard allows the commander to be flexible in terms of where they're obviously guarding, looking behind too to make sure no one's coming on them.
Yeah.
But they're allowed to have basically it's the same role as a reserve in some ways that you would be able to flex, somebody forward to deal with a threat on the on the east side, the west side, wherever they're.
You wonder how long it would take the rear guard to get a message to the front and that many people
Riding on an oxen.
without electronics or anything.
Just hope your donkey wasn't stubborn that day.
They probably had signal flags or something. Camel.
Just one that's crossed my mind.
Could have been trumpets.
I mean, that's a long,
Shofars.
you don't think of it, but that's a long.
It's a long, yeah. You'd have a hard time quickly
Well
moving somebody
over-
up from the rear guard.
Yeah.
Well over 1 million people by that point.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the text doesn't say where the family members were, but it seems to me they'd be following behind. If you had fighting men up front, you would have family members following the tribe. So you'd have, you'd have sort of the family members walking perhaps behind the lead of Judah. You're not leading with your women in front. You're not letting families walk together like that.
Well, the thing is what I was thinking is because when Jacob came up to Esau, what order did he do? They do the same thing.
No, Jacob sent his family ahead of him.
I know.
Don't do
That's
that.
not what they're doing
Never
here.
do-
Moses was leading, or God.
We
was
read
leading.
elsewhere that they went out in martial order, which means that they led with their fighting men up front.
Yeah.
you're gonna make contact with your fighters, not the family members. But again, the family members, I would think the Judah family members would be behind the tribe of Judah,
Mhm.
and in front of whoever's next in the formation, so to speak. Because
Benjamin's right there.
because once you get
So at the
set,
very front, you probably have the outer shell of it.
So the women
Except
children
for the
be
back.
I don't think they were known as
Protect-
Remember, that's why God went after Amalek,
yeah.
because they went after the rear guard. They went
So
after the
Everyone else
helpless,
was
the
just
second
need
lane.
to arm up the side.
It might mean that the rear guard did not do a good job of keeping everybody in front of them.
Yeah,
Because
that's
you wouldn't,
true.
but think about it, if you're the rear guard and your whole thing is your family members following behind you, it means that it might be like, Asher's family members that are being attacked by the Amalekites. Okay, so next on the list is the inverted
You're in the rear guard, you're
nuns.
probably saying
Inverted nuns.
The converted nuns.
The converted nuns?
Inverted, not converted.
Inverted nuns.
Inverted
Does that mean
nuns.
upside down?
No,
No, inverted means their insides now become their outer.
Yeah, I know.
When the flying nun flies upside down, she's an inverted nun.
There you go.
But this is not that. This is about noons, actually. That's how that word's pronounced. The inverted noons.
Is that like Joshua, son of Nun?
And this is what they look like in a printed Torah. See those separate letters there? That's the letter Nun upside down. This is setting apart verses 10, 35, and 36.
Oh, wow.
And here's it in a handwritten scroll is how that looks.
Wow. That's cool.
Somehow I thought an inverted nun would look a lot more gruesome.
So what does that mean? What is the meaning of those inverted noons anyway?
Who knows?
Parentheses?
Lots of theories.
Parentheses kind of would be a good idea. They'd be separating. Yeah, Jim was right. There's lots of theories. Separating out those verses from the others would be a way of putting that.
Because you read from right to left, right?
Yeah, but you don't read upside down. Just saying.
Well,
I've tried. It doesn't work out too well.
I guess they do. There's some. Is it Chinese calendars or things that go vertical?
so what's the meaning of the nun? Because I know every letter has its own general meaning.
Some say it is a meaning of the letter means life because it's a squiggle like that. It's a showing life moving
Like a river.
like a fish.
Oh, okay.
all those theories
So if you turn it upside down, it
are
means-
Right. There's no asterisk that says this is what the inverted noons mean. There's no asterisk to say why they have inverted noons there either, which, there's no Bible, no English Bible, no translation of a Bible has a noon in it that I'm aware of, unless you're looking at an art scroll or something with it, the Hebrew on one page and the English on the next. Doesn't even mention it having an inverted noon that sets it apart for the most part.
Yeah. You know what the shortest name in the Bible is, right? Nun. Joshua, son of Nun. Mom, help.
So anyway, Talmud says it's this book ranks, or these two verses rank as a book by itself.
Okay, as good as any other.
To inform you, this is another one is to tell you it's not in the right place.
Hey, you're reading in the wrong place.
They put this. We don't know where to put this. It's somewhere, but put it here.
Yeah, we don't know exactly where it goes, but when we're putting it here, but we don't think here's where it goes.
So another teaching is that the book is divided into three parts: chapter 1 through 10, chapter 10, and then book 2 is 10, 35, and 36. The ideal journey. What could have been had Israel not believed the bad report of the spies. And finally, the actual journey, lasting till the end of the journey.
So if those two verses are basically saying this is what could have happened, that might be why they're set apart like that, because this is not what happened.
and it's not in the right place. Anyway, those are some views on it. So, as Jim would know, this section is missing from the Qumran texts. There's no way to know if the inverted noons are older than the
How is it the
post-Second
most
Temple period.
controversial pieces of the Bible are always missing from the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Worms, cave worms. The variety of interpretations indicates the meaning of the inverted noons in the Torah is a mystery. Yep, those worms. Always eating the wrong things. Okay, so Dixie wants to know, what are your questions?
What about the Septuagint?
Being Greek, they wouldn't have bothered doing that.
Probably eBay.
Who's a fan around there?
No
Can't be
idea.
the dog.
Somebody stole my hat.
Padres.
You're on the wrong coast.
San Diego.
Oh, San Diego.
Oh, that's not South Dakota?
No, it's not South Dakota.
All right. So, what about Luke chapter 6? Have a couple
Luke here.
of slides. Not a lot. Now it happened that he was passing through some grain fields on Sabbath, and his disciples were picking the heads of grain, rubbing them in their hands, and eating the grain. But some of the Pharisees said, "Why do you do what is not lawful on the Sabbath?"
I've heard of teaching on this before, which I
Okay.
found interesting. Because of who Yeshua is and his knowledge, he knew what what would eventually be determined by the leadership, whatnot, that because now that's no longer considered even by the Talmud or anything. It's no longer considered an unlawful thing to thresh a head for yourself during the Sabbath. So you can eat.
I've heard it. That's not Yeshua's answer that he gives.
True.
But with healing, I mean, there's more than one school of Pharisees. We tend to think of Pharisees as being, one
United.
group, but there definitely were significant divisions between the school of Hillel and the school of Shammai on the topics.
Well, even in there was more divisions than that.
And then there were the Sadducees.
Mm-hmm.
They were
So-
Sadducee.
To know, I guess, I think to get a good
Pharisees in their own eyes, at least, were Pharisees.
a good example or good knowledge of what's going on here in terms of context, it's good to look at the Essene halakha versus the basic Pharisee halakha in terms of one thing, life. According to the Essenes, Sabbath was more important than saving a life. In the Pharisaic view, life outweighs resting on Sabbath. And so a good example from Qumran is that they would, if there was a man who was a drowning man, they would not throw a drowning man a ladder or a rope on Shabbat. They would definitely not lift up a beast of burden who had fallen over on Shabbat, and they would not rescue a donkey from a ditch, so to speak. Because they looked at it, well, why did the owner let his donkey out to work? Why was this person swimming on Shabbat? So they looked at it as Shabbat outranks it. That is not the case within traditional Judaism today, though, as you were alluding to, Ben, with the grain thing. Certainly with healing, if it's literally to save a life, you can break a lot of commandments to do that, because life outweighs that.
What about this right here? When it came to the grain, I heard a teaching where what they were doing is they didn't wash their hands. Interesting.
Well, that's, again, Yeshua doesn't really talk about the washing hands
I know,
here. He talks
I know.
about David. So we're going to take a look at that just for a
Okay.
second.
You can take
Yes.
longer if you want.
In wasn't the Shabbat all about life from the beginning? They're making the Shabbat above life. It doesn't make any sense considering the Shabbat's for life. It's
Right, but it would be, in their view, it was more important to rest on Shabbat than to work and save a life.
It's interesting, it's interesting to me, does he say and God approved of David when he did that?
We weren't talking about David.
We will.
yeah, we will
I mean,
momentarily. Yeshua did.
You want to slide behind?
Oh, yeah. You sure?
Or
Like
one
to
ahead.
provoke?
You're like one ahead, I think.
You sure
Connie?
purposely provoke sometimes.
What's that?
You sure sometimes he provoked them, sometimes provoked them to wrath,
On purpose.
just to get under
Just
their
to
skin.
tweak their nose.
Well, often it was to inform them of their own teaching and apply it to what they were thinking at the time.
Yeah.
So the story we see about David is in 1 Samuel 21.
Yep.
And David and his men ate the showbread, which is only allowed to do for the priests. And so he uses it as an example. So is he also is saying, he said that the priests do their work even on Shabbat, including circumcising boys on their 8th day, as well as the daily service is done on Shabbat. For those who are doing the service, Shabbat is of a lesser weight than performing their priestly duties, which involves sacrifice. And so Yeshua isn't teaching, I think, that anyone at any time can do the harvest, including on Shabbat. He's not really saying that. He's saying that his argument isn't that David could have done it any time as well. It seems like he's arguing that his mission and David's mission were parallel in that they are on a mission. The mission they had to accomplish was of a greater weight than resting on Shabbat at that time. So you could look at it as they were so hungry that if they had not done that, the mission would have failed.
Yeah.
And so their mission was of a greater weight than resting on Shabbat, just as David's mission was of a greater weight than allowing for the eating of the grain in the where it wasn't otherwise allowed to be consumed.
Yeah.
But we also have a story of healing. What about the healing side of it? Well, I think
Jewish thought today is Chobek Omer, light and heavy. So if you're healing somebody, you're healing
the
them.
thing is the Torah of Shabbat is about do good things on Shabbat. It's not simply about resting. It also is about doing good things.
particularly Hosea 6:6 is I think that is a verse that Yeshua often would reference.
When did Yeshua do? He always ministered to people on the Shabbat. He didn't rest on Shabbat.
Not like that.
Well, in the same way, though, that this command still exists, but there are things that are of a greater weight than it. So what Hosea 6:6 says, "For I delight in chesed rather than sacrifice, and in the knowledge of Elohim rather than burnt offerings." So chesed could be translated as mercy or loving kindness. So chesed is of a greater weight than sacrifice, and the knowledge of Elohim is a greater weight than burnt offerings. So we look at in terms of chesed as loving kindness is greater than sacrifice. So if chesed outweighs sacrifices and sacrifices outweighs Shabbat, at least for those who are doing it, for example, the priesthood, they work in the temple as their job, they are not held guilty, not called guilty of breaking Shabbat, because the temple service, the sacrifices, are of a greater weight than resting on Shabbat for them at the time. And so, if you look at it in this way, chesed, therefore, is of greater weight than Shabbat. So loving kindness, which would involve mercy and involve, I would say, saving a life, as a demonstration of chesed, is of a greater weight than resting on Shabbat. And so we don't want to get we don't want to fall, we don't want to, I guess, overcorrect. You don't want to drive off the road and say Shabbat is unimportant, and you don't want to take the Essene route and say Shabbat trumps everything. Both sides end up on the side of the road crashed, right? So what kind of things for chesed outweigh Shabbat today?
Helping somebody who's broke down on the side of the road.
Our animals get loose. They seem to do it on Shabbat. They literally do. Yeah, I said today, I said, what day does the dogs usually like to get loose? And they're like, yeah, today. Notice a pattern.
Well, you could argue with animals as well. Just feeding animals would be considered work.
Yeah.
But it is a work of chesed to feed an animal, which is even of a greater weight than resting on Shabbat. So you definitely are allowed and encouraged to feed your animals even on Shabbat.
Because you don't want them to eat your other animals. I remember the particular time you're supposed you don't want to eat your sheep that you're trying to raise.
And like, when I was younger, like, concerning animals, like someone would run into a cow, be there in front of her, saying someone else would get hurt if they didn't get it off the road, or, or someone splashes it with horses, gets out, and you gotta run them down.
Blue outside.
People, babies.
Those are great examples, I think, of, you may not be able to heal someone by a touch, but you can certainly take someone to a doctor who's going to be working on Shabbat as well, potentially. But in terms of the weight of it, it's really to save a life, but that is the ultimate. So it falls from that. I think chesed could mean something less than saving a life as well. But it doesn't necessarily mean.
Like I said, helping somebody who's broke down on the side of the road.
Right. It could, because things could happen with that as well. I mean, certainly that person could be victimized by a lot of things and be hit by a vehicle.
Sometimes also, I mean, when it's like sometimes when something's going to happen, when someone's going to be, I'm just saying sometimes it seems like that can be anxious, like there's someone's going to be extremely discredited or harmed in a way, saying.
That's the only
See,
slippery thing
Yeah, it is.
in my mind. Is think hard enough, you can apply that reasoning to not doing a lot of stuff that you should be doing.
I'm going to be extremely angry if I don't get pepperoni pizza on Shabbat, and then I'm going to hurt somebody. So that means I can legally go buy my pepperoni pizza.
You would be saving a life, your life.
Pepperoni coming from, that's not kosher.
Yeah.
But we have
No,
a
they didn't
similar
check the
deal.
pepperoni.
Permit you to say it.
Yeah.
Code enforcement.
Really hard to find, huh?
Say again.
The turkey pepperoni, really hard to find.
Code enforcement, Jim.
Okay. All code is written, all people are supposed to obey it if they're in certain frameworks. However, if you have a certain circumstance, there is what we call a variance. In other words, you can't do this code because of, and your explanation is good and reasonable.
Something outweighs that code, so to speak.
We don't call it a weight, That's, if people call it that, we'll call it that, because then that in people's minds gets them to thinking, okay, so there is a difference in commands. Where in some places it says, you disobey the command, you disobey the whole Torah. So it's called variance. If it's good enough reason, you're still considered breaking code, but you're given a variance for the reason that you want to make it. That's the only way you can do it, in my mind, without thinking of one code's lesser than the other.
You mean sort of like an exceptions clause in a will or something?
Kind of. If it meets certain parameters, there's a variance given. You're still technically breaking the code, but the reason was good enough for this variance.
It seems like, I mean, not, for example, not all Levites would be working in the temple on Shabbat.
Right. So
Because it's
they
based on the
better
24 priestly courses, so only the one course on duty at the time would
be.
be,
Levites not on duty can't go out and do something else and say, oh, well, I'm allowed to work on that.
yeah. Right.
So the variance is,
Mhm.
it's kind of like I never did forget about that golden calf, did he? Daily, evening, and morning sacrifices. Ah,
All right, folks. Pending your questions, Dixie wants to know why the Padres have the best record in baseball.
because everybody's out for COVID.
Brainwashed her.
Hey, didn't you hear they're going to win the World Series?
That's not the Orioles.
World Series.
It could happen. I'm talking the World Series. Yeah, I'm joking. You know, yeah.
So a couple comments from our stream here. Nathan Newell, some of you may remember him. He says that serving others outweighs resting on Shabbat, as basically what he was saying. The answer to the question in terms of when you would, what would outweigh Shabbat. I think with the same idea of the Chesed. He said,
What do you mean by serving?
yeah. Well, right. I would assume he's going to say the Chesed is the serving others, or yeah. It probably need to be more specific in what way.
That's why.
Yeah.
Variance.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you for joining us. I don't know we're prepared to do Havdalah tonight, so you can do that on your own if you'd like. But if there are no questions, we'll close this session with prayer. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, thank you for allowing us to come together to read your word, to study it. We thank you for your insights. We ask you give us easy travel and safe travel on the way home. It's in Yeshua's name we thank you. Amen.
Amen. That was good. Hey, how come your computer shut off earlier?
Well, I don't